Okay. Give me a second there. Okay. And the presentation is visible now, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So thank you everyone for coming. This is the Scholars Academy Financial Aid Workshop. And just as a reminder to everyone, it is currently financial aid season for our seniors. For our juniors, this is all information you're going to be using next fall. Okay. So before we talk about all the different application types, it's very important to get a good sense of what the cost of attendance actually is in college. Because you might learn that the tuition is X amount, but that isn't really the full cost of attendance. So there is tuition and fees, and then room and board. If you're choosing to live at school, that would be your dorm and your meal plan. Those are what we call direct costs. So those are costs you are definitely going to have to put X amount in a check twice a year for the fall semester, for the spring semester. And then there are indirect costs for college. So those would include books and supplies. You're definitely going to have a cost, but it varies person to person and major to major. Transportation. So are you taking a Greyhound bus to school, an MTA bus, an airplane? That's going to make a difference in the cost of attendance. And then miscellaneous personal expenses. Because I tell the students, no matter how studious and dedicated they are, they're not just going to go to class, go to the library, come home and stare at the wall. They are going to have some personal expenses, and that is true whether they are a residential student or they are commuting from a parent's home. They're going to have some personal expenses. So all of that together encompasses the cost of attendance. Okay. So the kids are sick of me because I sound like a broken record talking about this, but every college by law has a net price calculator on their website. This is so important because so often we hear students say something along the lines of, well, we know the school's expensive, but we are hoping for scholarships. So you can pretty much figure out exactly what a school is going to cost you ahead of time by using the net price calculator. So they ask two different kinds of questions. They ask you academic questions about your GPA and if you choose to share SAT scores. And then they also ask you financial questions about the size of your household, family income, things like that. And together it gives you an estimated net price. Okay, so the estimated net price is this is the out of pocket cost for this school, inclusive of any financial help you'll get from the school, inclusive of any merit aid you might get from the school. Okay, so if you put in all your information, I did a screenshot of Adelphi's just as an example, but every single college has this. If you put in all your information and it spits out $33,000, that's saying after financial aid, after scholarships, that's what you can expect to pay for this college. Um, and these are usually pretty accurate. They're not perfect, they're not 100%, but in our experience, the amount that you see on your net price calculator is the amount you are going to see reflected on your financial aid letter. So every student should be doing this for every single college that they are applying to, so that there are no surprises in the spring when it comes to the financial aid package and seeing how much the school is going to cost out of pocket. I also just briefly want to go over the different types of financial aid. So scholarships are gift aid. They do not need to be repaid. The colleges themselves offer scholarships, which usually you are applying for simply by applying to the college. You are considered for the scholarships that they have. Nonprofits also give scholarships, religious institutions, private companies, unions, professional organizations. So parents, if you're part of any civic organizations, if you are in a union, definitely find out if those organizations offer scholarships to children of its members. And scholarships can be based on lots of different things, your academics, your athletics, artistic talent, cultural background. So there's all different kinds of scholarships for all different kinds of things. Grants are also gift aid that does not need to be repaid, but this is strictly based on financial need. And grants are offered, again, by the colleges themselves. You are considered when you apply to the school and complete their financial aid forms. And they're also offered by the federal and state governments, and we're going to be talking about those applications that you'll be filling out and how they figure out what to give. So loans are money offered by either the government, banks, or private companies that must be repaid with interest. And then there is a program called work study. So some students who have already started filling out their college applications will see a question about if you want to be considered for work study. So this is a federal program for financially qualified students. Your income has to be below a certain threshold to qualify, to work part-time on their campus and earn money to assist with educational expenses. Students would go to the work study office on their campus to get a job. They're not assigned one, and they receive a paycheck for this job. So it doesn't automatically go to the school towards tuition, they receive a paycheck. So let's say your financial package includes $2,000 of work study. What that means is that you can go to the work study office, find an on-campus job, and earn up to $2,000 working there. And then once you hit the threshold of what your work study is, you cannot earn more than that. When students ask me, should I say yes to this? I always say yes, because if you deny it, it won't be there for you in the future. So you can get a work study job and then quit it if it's just you're not balancing your academics well. But if you don't take that work study in the beginning, they may not offer it to you again. Okay. Okay, so there's three main financial aid applications. And with certain exceptions, I'm going to go ahead and say everybody fills out the FAFSA, everybody fills out the TAP. CSS profile is dependent on which schools you're applying to. So not everyone is going to have to do the CSS profile. Okay, so which students should be completing these financial aid applications? All US citizens, all green card holders, and all legal permanent residents. So anyone who falls into any of those three categories is eligible for financial aid and should be completing these forms. Okay. For students who are on a U visa, a T visa, temporary protected status, or without a lawful immigration status, and that includes DACA recipients, those students cannot complete the FAFSA, the TAP, or the CSS. They can apply for New York State aid through the Senator Jose Peralta New York State DREAM Act. The link is here. I'm going to be sharing this. This allows these students to earn the equivalent of the New York State TAP grant. And this is only for students who do not have a social security number, are not either US citizens, green card holders, or lawful residents, legal permanent residents. Okay. So FAFSA, I feel like, is the big one. This is the one you hear a lot about, that everyone has questions about. FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. Please keep in mind, free is in the name. If you find yourself on some website and they are charging you to complete the FAFSA, you're in the wrong place. It's always free. I have a little screenshot here of what the homepage looks like. So our seniors this year, you guys are filling out the 2026 to 2027 FAFSA form. And that is because that is the year you're going to start college. So what type of aid is the FAFSA for? It is for institutional grants and scholarships. Institutional means from the college. On your FAFSA, you list every single college you are applying to. They receive it and look at it and decide how much they are going to give you based on the FAFSA. It is also good for the federal Pell Grant. So that is a grant by the federal government, does not need to be repaid for a financially qualified student. For federal loans and for the work study program, that is a federal program. So student loans get a lot of press. It's very important to understand that not all loans were created equal. Okay, so the best loan to get, but you have to be financially qualified for it, meaning underneath a certain threshold, is the subsidized direct federal loan. This is for eligible undergraduate students with demonstrated financial need. The award is up to $5,500 per year, depending on your grade level and dependency status. And the reason that this is the best loan you can get is because it does not gather interest while the student is in school. It currently has a 6.39% interest rate. Now, not all students are going to qualify this. So if you are a higher income student, you can't get that subsidized direct loan, but you do qualify for the unsubsidized direct loan from the federal government. So this is a federally backed loan, and it is for eligible undergraduate, graduate, and professional students. So this is what students in law school and in med school are taking out, as well as undergraduate students. So this is up to $20,500, unless you are also receiving a subsidized loan. In that case, it would be a little bit less. And it has a 7.94% interest rate, and it does gather interest while you're in school. The one you should be cautious about is the Parent Plus loan, also known as the Federal Plus loan. Okay, this is parents borrowing money for their dependent undergraduate student. You can borrow up to the cost of attendance, minus any other financial aid. So if you qualify for no financial aid and you're going to a school that costs $85,000 a year, you can potentially borrow $85,000 a year. This is why it's something to be cautious about, because people take out huge loans through the Plus loan, and that is allowed. It also, you can see, has the highest interest rate, which is the 8.94%. Another reason I want everyone to be cautious of this loan is because colleges will sometimes package large Plus loans to make their financial aid look more generous than it is. So they might give your student, let's say the school costs $80,000. They might give your student a $20,000 merit scholarship, and you're like, okay, $20,000 sounds like a lot. Then they might, if you don't qualify for any other financial aid, package you with a $40,000 Parent Plus loan. And then you'll see at the bottom, oh, your out-of-pocket cost is $20,000 a year. But to realize what you're agreeing to borrow. Also, they don't necessarily even know the parent's credit when they package. So they might offer more than it is even possible for the family to borrow based on their credit. So it's just something to be cautious about. But something to keep in mind is you do not need to borrow the amount offered. So if you get offered, for example, a Parent Plus loan of $10,000 and you're like, I really just need that $2,000. The other $8,000 I can cover, that's absolutely fine. You don't need to borrow the full amount. You also don't need to take any loans that are offered to you if you don't want to. Just because it's in the package does not mean that you need to take it. Okay, so these are the documents that you're going to need for the FAFSA. So every student needs an FSA ID in order to log into a FAFSA. It's basically a username and password that they create that is now their FAFSA account. Parents need one as well. Parents, if you have older students who have already gone to college and you already have one, you do not need to create a new one for this child. You use the one that you have. If you have gone to college more recently, and more recently now means in like the past 20 years, and you have an FSA ID from your own borrowing, again, you do not need to create a new FSA ID. You're using the same one. The tax returns, your federal tax returns from the year 2024, any amount of child support that was received or paid in the past year, and asset information such as the value of your cash savings and checkings account, the net worth of your investments, and the net worth of any businesses you may own. FAFSA asks you basically, what do you have in the bank today? So you probably don't want to complete the FAFSA the day your check clears. You probably want to complete the FAFSA the day after you pay your mortgage. You need to list any federal benefits you receive. So that includes if anyone in the household qualifies for free or reduced lunch, WIC, SNAP, SSI, if anyone is receiving Social Security, Medicaid or Medicare benefits, those things are declared on the FAFSA. And then you need, again, to list every single college the student is applying to. FAFSA will let you list 20 colleges at a time. Now, if a student is applying to more than 20, you can submit the FAFSA let it process, go back on, delete those schools and put on more schools. But I would strongly urge you to talk to your student if they're applying to more than 20 schools and ask why so many. And there's also a resource here with a link. Again, I'll be sharing this slideshow with everybody tomorrow. So what may seem like a simple question, but isn't always, is who is a parent on the FAFSA? This flowchart's a little bit blurry, so I hope everyone can read it. So if I am a student and I live with both my parents and they are married to each other, we report both parents' information on the FAFSA form. If I'm living with both my biological parents, but they are not married, they're still both my parents. So and they're both custodial of me. I live with them. So we're still sharing both of their information on the FAFSA form. So if a student lives with one parent, the question is, do you live with one parent more over the course of 12 months? So if you live with one parent and then you see the other parent every other weekend and on holidays, you are sharing the information of the custodial parent, the parent you live with more than 50% of the time, regardless of who is claiming you on the tax form. Okay, it is your custodial parent. If it is completely evenly split and you spend 50% of time with one parent and 50% of time with the other, then it's the parent that provides you more financial support, which probably would be the parent that claims you on their taxes, but every family is different. Another very important thing to recognize is that if a student is not living with both biological parents, they live, and whoever is the parent that they are, is their custodial or financially important parent that they are putting on the FAFSA, if that parent is remarried, that stepmother or stepfather or whoever it is part of the household, and their income has to be included. It doesn't matter if they are not financially supporting the child, if they are financially supporting other children who might be in college, if they are married to the parent you are putting on the FAFSA, their income information has to go as well. Okay, so who is not a parent on the FAFSA? Legal guardians, grandparents, unless they have adopted the child, siblings, uncles, aunts, family, friends, foster parents. Unless any of these people have legally adopted the child before the age of 13, these are not parents on the FAFSA. So what that means is if I am the student filling out the FAFSA and I live with my aunt who is my legal guardian and not my parents, I am considered an independent student and I do not provide any parental information on the FAFSA. So any student who has a social security number is eligible for aid regardless of the parent's immigration status. So if a student has a social and it, let's say, was born here and is a US citizen, you are eligible for aid even if your parents are without legal status. So if you have a parent without a social security number, that parent can still create an FSA ID, and instead of a social, there will be security questions, but you're still providing that parental information. So the steps to complete the FAFSA is that the student begins the FAFSA. They use their FSA ID to log on and fill out their personal information, their financial information, as well as listing their colleges. They then invite the parent via email onto the FAFSA, and the parent logs on with their FSA ID and completes the parental financial section. This is just a screenshot of what the email looks like when you are invited onto your child's FAFSA form. Okay. So parents have different tax information. So if the parents do not file taxes at all, then one parent completes the parental section. If parents are married and they file jointly, then only one parent needs to complete the parental section. If parents are married but file separately, the child must invite both parents onto the FAFSA, and both parents are providing their financial information. And again, if parents are divorced or separated, whoever you have decided based on time, or if it's 50-50 time based on finances, is the custodial parent. that is the only parent you are then inviting onto the FAFSA. So independent students meet any of the following criteria, any one. Over 24, working on a post-secondary degree. So no matter how old you are, once you have finished your bachelor's degree, you are now considered independent of your parents. If the student is married, if the student is active military or a veteran, an orphan or a ward of the court, an emancipated minor, in foster care or has been since the age of 13, has a legal guardian or has been in a legal guardianship since the age of 13, or is self-supporting homeless. Self-supporting is key here. A student who might live in a shelter with a parent is not an independent student. Okay, so when you complete the FAFSA, at the end it gives you your SAI. SAI is the Student Aid Index. This is the eligibility index for financial aid. It's determined by how you complete the FAFSA. The lowest SAI available is negative $1,500. So these would be the students with the most financial need. There is no upper limit for SAI. Colleges use this SAI to determine institutional aid. So the federal government will use the SAI to determine Pell Grant eligibility. And the maximum Pell Grant, which is the federal grant from the federal government, is $7,395. So about a third of students who complete the FAFSA are going to be randomly selected for verification. And this is a process in which the students must submit copies of all the financial documents that they used for the FAFSA to the federal government to confirm your answers. So students who go back and make multiple changes are more likely to get flagged for verification. Because of this, like I said, you should fill out the FAFSA the day after you pay your mortgage. Take a screenshot of your bank account that day in case you have to submit that as proof you're being honest. You always must be honest on the FAFSA. And I know all of our families are very honest. If you have been at all dishonest on your taxes, you have to tell that same story on the FAFSA. It has to match. Okay, so everything I just said was for the FAFSA, for all of the federal aid, the grants, the loans, those things. The next step is TAP. TAP stands for Tuition Assistance Program. This is the New York State aid. You must do the FAFSA first. After you submit the FAFSA, you will be given a link to the TAP application. If for some reason you missed that link, because a page pops up that says like, congratulations, you just completed your FAFSA, click here for New York State aid. If you missed that, don't worry. You wait the 3 to 5 business days for your FAFSA to process, and then you can go directly to TAP using the link below and apply for TAP. So for TAP, you have to be a U.S. citizen or eligible non-citizen, and you must be a resident of New York State. You have to be graduating or have graduated from high school in New York State, in United States, I'm sorry. Be a full-time undergraduate of at least 12 credits, and you have to keep up a GPA of at least a C in order to continue to be eligible for the TAP. You have to be charged at least $200 of tuition per year, not be in default of any state or federal loans, and meet the income requirements. So it's for dependent undergraduate students, it's $125,000. For married independent undergraduate students with it's $60,000, and for unmarried independent undergraduate students with no tax dependents, it's $30,000. So what that means is for a student who is living with both their parents going to college for the first time, the family must make under $125,000 in order to qualify for any amount of TAP. For that independent student who's in a legal guardianship, they just need to make less than $30,000, they themselves, in order to qualify for the TAP. However, even if you know your family doesn't qualify, you should still complete the TAP because there may be other scholarships and awards that are going to ask you to complete that application. So unlike the FAFSA, you do not list every school on the TAP. So when you open the TAP, it is linked to your FAFSA. So you're going to see one school that you put on the FAFSA linked there, and it is a placeholder. So you just submit it with that school. You can change it in the spring if you're going someplace different. You are going to need your 2024 New York State tax forms for the TAP. The TAP grant can only be used at a college located in New York State. It doesn't matter if it's a public school or private school, but it must be located in New York State. And the grant ranges from $1,000 to $5,665, depending on family income. And then the final application we're going to talk about, the one that not every single person is going to be filling out, is the CSS profile. So some colleges, mostly private colleges, although certainly not all private colleges, and then a few random public ones like University of Michigan, for example, require the CSS profile. This is available on College Board. It's right on the homepage, and the students use the College Board account that they already have to access it. It is a much more lengthy and detailed financial aid profile. So for the FAFSA, if your student completes their part, invites you on, you have your tax information ready, you go on, like the FAFSA could take about half an hour in total if you have everything prepared. The CSS is going to be about 3 hours. You don't have to do it all in one sitting. But it is much more lengthy, much more detailed. It asks you for a lot more information than the FAFSA does. So documents you need for that CSS profile would be your federal tax returns going back 3 years, retirement plans, bank account information, any information about assets and liabilities. And then for this one, unlike the FAFSA, you need to enter some information for the non-custodial parent. There's a non-custodial parent form for students who are only living with one of their parents that the other parent needs to provide their financial information as well. If it's not available, if a student is not in touch with one of their parents, they complete the CSS profile waiver request, indicating that they cannot provide information about that parent, and they will probably be asked to provide some type of proof, letter from the school, and some other documents kind of showing they are not in contact with that parent and can't provide financial information. So to complete the CSS profile, you sign in using your College Board account, start the application, you can save it and go back to it as many times as you want. You complete the student financial information, you complete the parental financial information, you list all the colleges you're applying to that require the CSS. So that probably will not be all of your schools. And then you submit your application. Unlike the FAFSA and the TAP, the CSS profile is not free. They charge $25 for the first college you put on there and then $16 for each additional one. However, if your family makes under $100,000, and that is what you're saying on the CSS, those fees will be waived. After you submit, then you have to go onto your dashboard. Some colleges are going to require you to upload documents through something called iDoc, which is on your dashboard for the CSS profile after you complete it. And if you submit the CSS profile and you only had one school that required it, and a month later you realize you want to apply to another school that requires it, that's fine. You can go back on and add that school to your completed CSS profile. Okay, so all of this was for federal aid, state aid, and institutional aid. Now, there are also private scholarships given out by lots of different sources, like we said, nonprofits, religious institutions, civics institutions, private companies, corporations do it. So we, as a College and Career Office, we do send these scholarships out when they come across our office. However, they don't send us as much as they used to because now so much of it is online. So some reputable places to find scholarships that you know are legit would be these links here. I've already shared these with students a lot of the time, and again, I'm going to be sharing this presentation, but these are reputable sites where you know you're finding things that are real. You want to watch out and make sure that you're only applying to scholarships that are legitimate. So some signs of a scholarship scam would be if there are application fees, you're never going to be paying to apply for a scholarship. If there's no phone number, no proof of past winners, asking you for personal financial information. So a scholarship will either send you a check or sometimes it'll go directly to your tuition. They're never going to put the money in your bank account. So they should never be asking for your routing number or anything like that. Winning a scholarship you did not apply to, that would not be real. Search fees, claims you can't find the information anywhere else. And if you do come across something that is a scam, you can report it to the Federal Trade Commission at ftc.gov. Oh, there are a couple of scholarships that are specific through New York State. New York State gives them. So I'm highlighting the two that most impact our students, but there are some more on the HEFC website. So you might have heard something about tuition-free college in New York or free college in New York. What people are talking about when they say that is the New York Excelsior Scholarship. So this is a last dollar scholarship for tuition, not room and board, at a CUNY or a SUNY school. What a last dollar scholarship means is that, let's say you qualified for $1,000 of TAP and $1,000 of Pell. Tuition at CUNY and SUNY is about $7,500 a year. That leaves you with $5,500. This will cover that. This is for families making $125,000 a year or less. The application opens in the spring, usually May or June, because the students have to have already enrolled. They have to know they're going to a CUNY or SUNY school. And there is a link to sign up when the application opens, and we also always send that information out as well. And the other one is the New York STEM Incentive Scholarship. This one is not based on family finances at all. It is a full tuition scholarship for those studying a STEM field, an approved STEM field at either a SUNY or a CUNY school. This is only for students graduating in the top 10% of their class. These students already know who they are because of SUNY's top 10% promise. So while it is true that we do not rank our students, we can identify the top 10% from the DOE system. So just to keep in mind, we have 161 seniors this year, so this is only 16 students who would qualify for this. And again, that application opens in the spring because the student had to have already enrolled and declared a STEM major at a CUNY or SUNY to qualify for this. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing so I can see everybody and go into the chat if there's questions. Also, please feel free to unmute yourself and chat with us.
I see one question in the chat, Ms. Seltzer. Are the income requirements gross or adjusted gross income amounts?
So for the purposes of the FAFSA, they're using your federal tax form, so it's usually adjusted gross income.
What about for the Excelsior Scholarship?
I believe that is also adjusted gross income.
Thank you.
I have a question. Is your income based on the whole family, or is just based on what you make and what she gets?
The income is based on household income. So that it's basically the parents and the child's income. So like if they have an older sibling with like, or a younger sibling with a part-time job, that sibling's income would not be considered, but parents and student who is going to college.
Do the applications have to be filled out each year?
Yes. So they always open in the fall, and they have to be completed each year the student is going to be in college the next year.
Does the
Is
Excelsior factor in 2024, or is it the current year?
It's factoring 2024. So that's something else that all of these things use the prior year. So sometimes family incomes have changed. So let's say there's a situation where a parent lost a job in 2025, so the income is lower. You have to fill out these forms based on 2024 and then contact the financial aid office individually for each school the student's applying to and let them know that there was a change of situation.
another one? Do we need to open another account for CSS if we already have one for another child?
Yes, because this is not a parent account, it's a student account. So the student who is applying now will have their own CSS account.
For FAFSA, do you need to mention your assets and bank information as parents?
Yes.
Are scholarships suggested on Common App good to apply to?
They're definitely legitimate. Nothing on Common Application is going to be fake. So yeah, you can definitely do that.
A clarifying question regarding CSS, and is it for tax returns from 3 years or the last 2 years?
So it's traditionally always been from the past 3.
These are excellent questions, so keep them coming. They'll
Yeah.
not only help you, but help others.
Are 529 accounts factored in? Okay. So yes, because they are considered an asset of the parent if you're the one who opened it. If grandma opened a 529 when the child was born, grandma is not financially responsible for a child, so that does not need to go on the FAFSA. But if the parents are the custodians of the 529, then yes, that does go on the FAFSA. I always say we should put that in the 6th grade orientation, say, have grandma open it.
What was the amount a single parent has to make again for the year?
So it doesn't matter if the parent's single or not, it's the household income. Are you talking about for Excelsior or for like
Financial aid. What was financial aid? What was the amount again for a single household?
So there's no set amount for financial aid in general. It's $125,000 to qualify specifically for the TAP grant and specifically for the Excelsior scholarship. Now, for the Pell Grant and the federal loans and institutional aid, it's much more complicated. There isn't a single amount. They look at the income, they look at the assets, they look at some debt information, and they kind of have like an algorithm that figures out what they're going to give. So there isn't like a set number like that. If you make below this, you get financial aid. If you make above it, you do not get financial aid. Are 457 accounts considered investment or retirement? I'm sorry, I don't know what a 457 account is. Are there particular deadlines to fill out financial aid? So they are, but the deadlines are technically like February 1st. I definitely recommend everyone have it done this year before 2026. Are
Does the-
529 account for the siblings including the assets? No, they are not, because that money is only for the sibling.
For CSS, do you have to include information about investments or retirement?
Yes. They ask pretty detailed, granular questions.
When does FAFSA applications open?
They're open now for the next school year. But again, if you're an 11th grade parent, please don't do this. This is for next year. But yes, for all seniors, they are open now.
Will we be sending out the Excelsior application in the spring, or do parents need to monitor on their own?
I always alert everyone once it opens. Wait, hold on, I saw another question. Okay, so somebody asked about early decision. For FAFSA and TAP, TAP there really isn't, but for FAFSA and CSS, it depends on the school. So for some schools, same thing, just apply by the end of the year. But for example, I was looking at this with a student who was applying early decision to RPI, and they want the FAFSA and the CSS by November 15th. So you have to look at the individual school you're applying early decision to, because they might have a different financial aid deadline. Are assets considered what you have put in, or does it include paper profits that are not tangible? I'm not really sure how to answer that. I think it probably depends on the individual situation. Like they ask very specific questions. They don't just ask you like, what are your assets? They're asking about investments, about business, businesses you own. They ask about real estate that you own other than the house you live in. So those are all considered assets. So submitted the FAFSA, didn't put in the schools. Do I have to put in the schools? Yes. So once your FAFSA has been processed, you can log back in, add your schools, and submit it again. So deferred compensation accounts for that most city employees use. I think that is considered retirement. All right, so somebody's asking me to have my crystal ball out. Will colleges be as generous as in the past with the government shutdown, less international students attending? This is going to be extremely specific to each college. So regarding the international students, for the next school year, no, I would say no. All of, for example, the Ivy Leagues have not announced any change. And in fact, a lot of them are increasing their financial aid. So at least for the next school year, the answer is no. It's also very, very important to kind of remember, because there is so much news about college, that so much of what we hear in the news is only applicable to like the 10 to 15 most highly selective universities in the country. So the international students is going to make virtually no difference to the majority of institutions our kids are going to go to. But it makes a huge difference to Harvard. It makes a huge difference to Columbia. But as of right now, it's not affecting like no one's getting higher tuition or less financial aid as of for the next school year based on that. Now the government shutdown. Obviously, I hope that that's not still going on once your financial aid is being distributed for the spring. The Pell has already been approved, so it's not that students would get less if, let's say, the government shuts down again when it's time to disperse payments to you guys, which it's not outside the realm of possibility. It's the distribution that would be delayed, but not necessarily the amount, if that makes sense.
I have some questions that were sent directly to me. Does TAP cover housing and dorming?
Just tuition.
How much are parent assets factored in when determining how much aid a student receives? For example, does the income of a household have more weight compared to parent assets?
It's kind of hard to say because it is this sort of amorphous algorithm. And the way one college looks at it may not be the exact same way another college looks at it. Or any other questions?
I don't see any, but if you feel like you did enter one and it wasn't answered, you can enter it again or unmute.
So I just have a
Everyone-
question. It's Jack Dalton's mom. So if
Okay.
he's worked over the last couple of years and filed tax returns himself, that gets incorporated into his portion of the FAFSA?
Yes.
Great, okay. And one more, is it to set up the student ID, is it to go to College Board?
No, it's literally fsaid.gov, and that's in the presentation that
Wasn't
I'll
he
be
ever?
everyone.
I thought so.
Thanks.
Also, if you go to the FAFSA, it's gonna say like, do you have an FSA ID? No, you have to like click here and make one. So you can't like accidentally get into it without one. I also know this is a lot of information at once. So please I am always on my email. I'm by my phone, between 7:30 in the morning and 2:50 in the afternoon. So please feel free to reach out if you think of questions later. And yes, tomorrow morning I will be sending this presentation out to everybody. And actually, that's a good reminder for me to stop recording. The recording is too big to send out en masse, but if you feel like it would be helpful for you, just let me know and then I can email it to you directly.